Park. Hana wiped down the last counter in Suite 47B and checked her watch. Another 12-hour shift complete. Her back ached, her feet hurt, and she still had 6 more years of this before her family's debt would be paid. 6 years of cleaning up after the galaxy's wealthiest beings on the Celestial Haven orbital station. She gathered her cleaning supplies and headed toward the service elevator when her communicator buzzed. The message was from her supervisor. Mrs. Choi. Report to my office immediately. No. Hana's stomach dropped. Immediate summons were never good news. Had she made a mistake? Broken? Something expensive? She hurried through the narrow service corridors that staff used to stay out of sight from the wealthy residents. Mrs. Choi's office was a small room tucked behind the main staff quarters. The older woman sat behind her desk, her face unreadable. Next to her stood a tall, insectoid being that Hana recognized as one of the station administrators. Sit down, Hana, Mrs. Choi said, gesturing to a chair. Hana sat, her heart pounding. Is something wrong? Wrong? No. We have a special assignment for you. Mrs. Choi glanced at the administrator, who clicked his mandibles in what might have been approval. One of our most important residents needs a pet sitter. The pay is substantial. 50,000 credits for 2 weeks of work. Hana blinked. 50,000 credits? That was more than she made in a year. What's the catch? The administrator's antennae twitched. The resident is Ambassador Velkara of the Thraxian Empire. She requires someone to care for her offspring while she attends an emergency diplomatic summit. Offspring? Hana repeated slowly. You mean a juvenile Thraxian? Yes, Mrs. Choi said. She pulled up a holographic display, showing a creature that made Hana's breath catch. It looked like a cross between a dragon and an armored beetle, covered in dark scales with multiple glowing eyes. He's 6 months old. Still a baby by their standards. Hana stared at the image. Thraxians are classified as Class 7 predators. I've seen the safety warnings. They're supposed to be incredibly dangerous. The juvenile is not dangerous, the administrator said, though his tone suggested he didn't entirely believe his own words. He requires basic care, feeding, enrichment activities, and companionship. The ambassador specifically requested a human caretaker. Why me? Hana asked. Why not someone with experience handling exotic species? Mrs. Choi's expression softened slightly. You're the only one willing to consider it. Everyone else refused. The ambassador leaves tomorrow morning. And she's desperate. If you accept, you'll receive half the payment up front, and the other half when she returns. 25,000 credits immediately. That would clear half her family's remaining debt. Her mother could finally get the medical treatment she needed. Her younger brother could continue his education. But this was a Thraxian, a species known across the galaxy for their warrior culture, their psychic abilities, and their terrifying physical strength. Even a baby one could probably tear her apart. What if something goes wrong? Hana asked quietly. The administrator's antennae drooped. The ambassador has assured us the juvenile is well behaved. She would not entrust him to anyone if she believed there was genuine danger. You will be provided with emergency protocols and direct communication with Thraxian specialists. Hana closed her eyes. She thought of her mother's tired face during their last video call. She thought of her brother's message, saying he might have to drop out of school. She thought of 6 more years of endless cleaning, of bowing and scraping to beings who barely acknowledged her existence. I'll do it, she said. Mrs. Choi actually smiled. Good. Report to Ambassador Velkara's quarters at 0600 tomorrow for orientation. And Hana? Be careful. 0 blind. 0 0 0 0 0 0. The next morning, Hana stood outside the ambassador's suite on the station's top level, where only the most elite residents lived. Her hands trembled as she pressed the door chime. The door opened to reveal Ambassador Velkara herself. She was massive, easily 3 meters tall, her body covered in deep purple scales that shimmered in the light. 4 golden eyes regarded Hana with an intensity that made her feel naked and vulnerable. "You are the human caretaker," Velkara said. Her voice was surprisingly melodic, translated through a device on her throat. "Park Hana." "Yes, Ambassador." Hana managed, bowing slightly. "Come inside." "We have little time." Velkara stepped aside, and Hana entered the most luxurious quarters she had ever seen. The ceilings were 6 meters high, the floors made of some kind of polished crystal. Strange plants from alien worlds grew in carefully tended gardens along the walls. Velkara led her to a large room dominated by what looked like an elaborate playpen. Inside, a small creature slept curled in a nest of soft materials. Even asleep, Hana could see the resemblance to the adult Thraxian. Dark, iridescent scales covered his body, about the size of a large dog. Small, underdeveloped wings were folded against his back. "This is Taman," Velkara said, her voice softening. "My son, he's smaller than I expected," Hana admitted. "He hatched only 6 months ago. He will not reach full size for another 15 years. Velkara tapped a control panel, and the playpen's barrier lowered. "He has been fed this morning, but he will require another meal in 6 hours. The food is prepared and stored in the thermal unit. Instructions are programmed into the household system." Taman stirred, his eyes opening one by one. 4 luminous orbs, each a different shade of gold and amber, focused on Hana. The cub made a sound, somewhere between a chirp and a purr, and rose to his feet. "Do not show fear," Velkara instructed. "Thraxians can sense emotional states. Fear triggers predatory instincts. Easier said than done." Hana's heart hammered as Taman approached the edge of the pen, his eyes never leaving her face. His scales clicked softly as he moved, and she could see the sharp claws on his feet. "Approach him," Velkara said. "Let him learn your scent." Hana took a deep breath and stepped forward. Taman's head tilted, his nostrils flaring. She extended her hand slowly, the way she might approach a nervous dog. Taman sniffed her fingers, then pressed his scaled snout against her palm. The purring sound grew louder, vibrating through her bones. It wasn't an unpleasant feeling. Actually, kind of soothing. "He accepts you," Velkara said, and Hana could hear the relief in her voice. "This is good. Very good. What do I do if he gets upset or scared?" Hana asked, carefully stroking Taman's head. His scales were surprisingly smooth, warm to the touch. "Speak calmly. He does not understand words yet, but he responds well to tone. Physical contact soothes him. And if there is an emergency, use the communicator to contact me or the specialists." Velkara spent the next hour reviewing care instructions, showing Hana where everything was stored, demonstrating how to operate the specialized equipment. Taman followed them around, never straying far from Hana's side. Every few minutes, he would brush against her leg or chirp for attention. Finally, Velkara had to leave. She knelt beside her son, touching her forehead to his, in what was clearly an affectionate gesture. She spoke to him in the Thraxian language, a series of clicks and melodic tones. Taman chirped back, but his eyes kept finding Hana. "I will return in 14 days, Velkara said, standing. She looked at Hana with those intense, golden eyes. "Thank you for doing this. You cannot know how much it means." Then she was gone, and Hana was alone with a baby alien predator. Taman stared at the door where his mother had disappeared, then looked up at Hana. He made a questioning sound. "It's okay," Hana said softly, though she wasn't sure if she was reassuring him or herself. Taman walked over and sat directly on her feet, his weight warm and solid. He looked up at her expectantly. Hana laughed despite her nervousness. "All right then. I guess we're doing this." She carefully sat down on the floor, and Taman immediately climbed into her lap, curling up like an oversized cat. As she hesitantly stroked his scales, his purring intensified, and then something happened that Hana would never forget. A single word echoed in her mind, not heard with her ears but felt deep in her consciousness. Safe. Hana froze. Had she imagined it? But no. Taemin's eyes were glowing brighter, fixed on her face. She felt a strange warmth in her chest, like an invisible thread connecting her to the small creature in her arms. What had she gotten herself into? 3 days had passed since Ambassador Velkara left, and Hana had settled into a routine with Taemin. Mornings started with feeding, a messy affair involving protein-rich slurry that Taemin enthusiastically splattered everywhere. Then came playtime with specialized toys designed for his developing claws and teeth. Afternoons were for exploration around the suite, and evenings ended with what Hana had started calling story time. Taemin loved when she read to him. It didn't matter that he couldn't understand the words. He would curl up beside her on the large cushions, his purring creating a constant background vibration, and listen as she read from her small collection of books. Sometimes she read in Korean, sometimes in Standard Galactic. He seemed to like the sound of her voice, regardless of the language. The strange psychic connection hadn't happened again, but Hana found herself increasingly attuned to Taemin's moods. She could tell when he was hungry, playful, tired, or anxious, and he seemed equally aware of her emotional state. On the 4th morning, Hana received an unexpected visitor. She answered the door to find Lee Daeun, her only real friend on the station. Daeun worked in the recycling department, and they usually met for meals during their breaks. "I had to see it for myself," Daeun said, her eyes wide as she stepped inside. "Everyone's talking about how you're living with a Thraxian." "Just watching him for a couple weeks," Hana said. "Want to meet him?" Daeun looked nervous but nodded. They found Taemin in his favorite spot, a sunny area near the large windows overlooking space. He was playing with a puzzle toy, his claws carefully manipulating the pieces. When he noticed them, his eyes brightened, and he bounded over. But instead of greeting Daeun, he positioned himself between her and Hana, making a low rumbling sound. "It's okay," Hana said gently, placing her hand on Taemin's head. "This is my friend. She's safe." Taemin's rumbling stopped, but he watched Daeun carefully as she sat down. "He's protective of you," Daeun observed. "That's actually kind of sweet." "He's a good boy," Hana said, scratching behind where Taemin's ears would be if he had external ones. His purring resumed immediately. Daeun shook her head in amazement. "You know the station's security has been doing extra patrols up here? They're worried about having a dangerous predator on board." Hana frowned. "He's a baby. He's not dangerous. Try telling them that." "I heard Administrator Kwan wanted to put monitoring devices in here, but the ambassador threatened to file a diplomatic complaint." Over the next few days, Hana became increasingly aware of the attention Taemin was attracting. When she took him to the suite's private garden area, she noticed security guards watching from a distance. Other residents who passed by gave them wide berth, some looking frightened, others merely curious. It made Hana angry. Taemin was just a child. Yes, he had sharp claws and scales and looked intimidating to some, but he was gentle and sweet. He had never once shown aggression toward her. One evening, as she was preparing Taemin's dinner, the lights suddenly flickered and went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in a dim red glow. "Station-wide power fluctuation," a mechanical voice announced. "Main power will be restored shortly." Taemin, who had been playing nearby, made a sound Hana had never heard before. A high-pitched whine of distress. In the dim light, she saw him backing into a corner, his eyes wide with fear. "Hey, it's okay," Hana said, approaching slowly. "It's just a power issue, nothing to be scared of." But Taemin's whining grew louder. His scales began to glow faintly, a bioluminescence she hadn't known he possessed. He was terrified. Hana didn't think. She simply went to him, kneeling down and pulling him into her arms. He was heavier than he looked, all solid muscle under those scales. But she held him tight. "Shh," she murmured. "I've got you." Taemin pressed against her, trembling. Without thinking, Hana began to sing. It was a lullaby her mother had sung to her when she was small. a simple Korean melody about stars and dreams and home. As she sang, something extraordinary happened. That warmth in her chest returned, stronger this time. She could feel Taemin's fear as if it were her own, a sharp spike of terror gradually softening into relief, and she sensed him feeling her emotions too. Her calm determination, her protective instinct, her affection for him. The connection intensified with each note of the song. By the time the lights came back on, Taemin had stopped trembling. His purring had resumed, deeper and more content than she'd ever heard it, but the connection didn't fade. Hana could still sense him there, in the back of her mind, a warm presence, like a small flame in the darkness. "Taemin?" she whispered. His 4 eyes looked up at her, glowing softly. And then she heard it again, clearer than before. Not quite words, but feelings and images that formed meaning in her mind. Safe, warm, home, mother. Hannah's breath caught. "I'm not your mother, little one. Your real mother will be back soon." But Taemin's feelings didn't change. In his mind, she was safety, and comfort, and love. She was home. The next morning, Hana contacted the Thraxian specialists, as she had been instructed to do if anything unusual happened. A severe-looking Thraxian appeared on the communication screen. His scales a deep red. "Describe the incident," he commanded. Hana explained about the power outage, Taemin's fear, and the song. She hesitated before mentioning the psychic connection, but ultimately decided they needed to know. The specialist's eyes widened. "You can sense the juvenile's emotions? And he can sense yours?" "Yes. Is that normal?" "No, human. It is not normal at all. This is expected with the mother, sometimes with the father or close family members. Never with another species. Never with a human." "Is it dangerous?" Hana asked, worry creeping into her voice. The specialist was quiet for a long moment. "I do not know. This has never happened before. I must consult with the ambassador. Do not encourage the connection, but do not attempt to sever it either. Such an act could harm both of you." The communication ended, leaving Hana more confused than before. She tried to go about her day normally, but everything felt different now. She was aware of Taemin constantly, even when he was in another room. She knew when he was content, when he wanted attention, when he was curious about something, and he seemed even more attached to her. He followed her everywhere, chittering unhappily when she needed to use the bathroom and had to close the door. When she sat down to eat her own meals, he would curl up at her feet, occasionally looking up at her with those luminous eyes. That evening, as Hana was cleaning up after dinner, her communicator buzzed. It was a message from Administrator Kwon, requesting her presence in his office the next morning. Hana's stomach tightened. This couldn't be good. She arrived at the appointed time to find Kwon sitting behind his desk. His insectoid features impossible to read as always, but his antennae were angled in a way that suggested displeasure. "Miss Park," he began, "I've received concerning reports about your assignment with the Thraxian juvenile." "What kind of reports?" Hana asked, keeping her voice steady. "The specialists inform me that you and the creature have formed some kind of psychic bond. This is highly irregular and potentially dangerous." "Taemin isn't dangerous," Hana said firmly. "You don't think?" Kwon's antennae twitched. "Miss Park, you're a cleaning service worker, not a xenobiologist. You're not qualified to make that determination." "Then what do you suggest?" Kwon pulled up a holographic document. "The station is prepared to offer you a generous severance package. 50,000 credits, plus an additional 25,000 for the inconvenience. In exchange, you will terminate your assignment immediately and return to your regular duties. 1. ATD. In 4T. ATD. ATD. ATC. ATD. 75,000 credits. More money than Hana had ever dreamed of having. Enough to pay off her family's entire debt, with some left over. But it would mean leaving Taemin, breaking the bond that had formed between them. She thought of his small form trembling in the darkness, the way he had relaxed in her arms when she sang. She thought of his joy when she played with him, his contentment when she read to him. The way he looked at her, with absolute trust. "No," Hana said quietly. Kwan's antennae shot straight up. "Excuse me?" I said, "No, I'm not leaving Taemin. His mother trusted me to take care of him. And that's what I'm going to do. Miss Park, be reasonable. This situation could become a diplomatic incident. What happens when the juvenile grows larger, stronger? What happens if the bond becomes unstable? I'll deal with that if it happens," Hana said. "But I'm not abandoning him." Kwan stared at her for a long moment. "Very well. But understand that any consequences of this decision are yours alone to bear." Hana left the office with her heart pounding. She had just turned down more money than she had ever seen. For what? An alien child that wasn't even hers? But when she returned to the suite and Taemin bounded over to greet her, purring and rubbing against her legs, she knew she had made the right choice. Through their bond, she felt his happiness at her return. And something else. Something that felt like the beginning of love. Ambassador Velkara returned on schedule, exactly 14 days after she had left. Hana had spent the morning preparing Taemin, trying to explain that his mother was coming home. He seemed to understand, his emotions a mix of excitement and something that felt like anxiety. When the door opened and Velkara entered, Taemin chirped happily and ran toward her. But after a brief greeting, nuzzling against her scales, he returned to Hana's side and sat down, pressed against her leg. Velkara's 4 eyes focused on this behavior, then shifted to Hana. "We need to speak privately." "Of course," Hana said. "Taemin, why don't you play with your puzzle toy?" The cub chirped in protest but obeyed, though Hana could feel his reluctance through their bond. In Velkara's study, the ambassador sat down heavily, a very human gesture of weariness. "The specialists have informed me of what has occurred. My son has chosen you as his second mother." "I don't understand what that means," Hana admitted. Velkara was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "Among my people, juveniles occasionally form bonds with individuals outside their birth parents. We call these individuals second mothers or second fathers, depending on their role. It is a deep psychic connection, permanent and unbreakable." "Permanent?" Hana's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes. The bond you and Taemin share will last for both your lifetimes. As he grows, it will evolve, but it will never disappear." Velkara leaned forward. "Traditionally, second mothers are honored family members, mentors who guide the juvenile through their development. They share responsibility for the child's upbringing. But I'm human," Hana said. "How can I possibly fulfill that role? That is precisely the problem." Velkara's tone was not unkind, but it was serious. No human has ever been chosen as a second mother to a Thraxian. The political implications are significant. Already, there are those who question whether this bond should be recognized. Hana felt her heart sink. What happens if it's not recognized? The bond cannot be severed without causing severe psychological damage to both parties. However, unrecognized bonds are considered invalid in Thraxian law. You would have no legal rights to Taemin, no protection under our customs, and Taemin would be considered defective, damaged. His future opportunities would be severely limited. Velkara's voice was tight, with barely contained emotion. "I will not allow that to happen to my son." "What do you want me to do?" Hana asked. Velkara stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "I want you to come with us to Thraxis, the homeworld. There, the bond can be formally recognized by the High Council. You would undergo training in our customs and laws. You would become, in every legal sense, Taemin's second mother." Hana's mind raced. Leave the station? Leave human space? Travel to an alien world where she would be the outsider? The strange one? "I have my family to think about," Hana said. "My mother's medical bills, My brother's education. I am aware of your family's financial situation, Velkara said. If you agree to this, the Thraxian Empire will ensure your family's debts are cleared and their needs are met. Your mother will receive the best medical care available. Your brother's education will be fully funded. It was everything Hana had worked for, handed to her on a silver platter. But the cost was her entire life. Can I think about it? Hana asked. Of course. But understand that we depart in 3 days. If you choose not to come, you will need to say goodbye to Taemin. The separation will be painful for both of you, but you are both young. The bond may fade with time and distance. That night, Hana couldn't sleep. She lay in the guest quarters of the suite, staring at the ceiling. Taemin had wanted to sleep near her, and she hadn't had the heart to refuse. He was curled up on a cushion beside her bed, his soft purring the only sound in the dark. Through their bond, she could feel his contentment, his trust that she would be there when he woke up. What kind of person would she be if she betrayed that trust? But what kind of person would she be if she abandoned her family for an alien child she had known for only 2 weeks? The next day, Daeun came to visit again. She brought coffee and pastries, and they sat in the suite's garden while Taemin played nearby. You're actually considering it, Daeun said after Hana explained the situation. Going to the Thraxian homeworld. Writer. Minostox. Am I crazy? Hana asked. Daeun watched Taemin, who was carefully stalking a mechanical butterfly toy, his movements precise and focused. You know what I see when I look at you two? I see someone who's finally found something they care about more than obligation. What do you mean? Hana, you've spent your entire adult life doing what you're supposed to do, working to pay your family's debt, following the rules, being the responsible one. Daeun turned to look at her. When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Because it made you happy? Bon. Daeun. Hana opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. She couldn't remember. That little guy chose you, Daeun continued. Out of everyone on this station, everyone in the galaxy, he chose you. And I can see that you've chosen him too. Even if you're afraid to admit it. I've known him for 2 weeks, Hana protested weakly. And in 2 weeks, you've become more alive than I've seen you in the entire year we've been friends. Daeun smiled. Look, I'm going to miss you if you go. But I think you should. I think this is your chance to have a life that's actually yours. That evening, Hana sent a message to her mother back on Earth. She explained everything. The bond with Taemin. The opportunity. The choice she was facing. Her mother's response came the next morning. It was a video message, her mother's kind face filling the screen. My daughter, she said, her eyes warm. Do you think I don't know what you've sacrificed for us? All these years, working yourself to exhaustion to pay for my mistakes, my debts. I never wanted that for you, her mother smiled. If this alien child has chosen you, if you have the chance to be something more than a servant working off someone else's debt, then you take it. You take it, and you don't look back. Your brother and I will be fine. We always have been. But you, my precious girl, you deserve to be happy. Hana watched the message 3 times, tears streaming down her face. She found Velkara in the study, reviewing diplomatic reports. I'll go with you, Hana said. I'll come to Thraxis. The ambassador's expression was difficult to read, but her emotions, surprisingly, filtered through to Hana. Relief, gratitude, hope. There is something you must understand, Velkara said. The High Council will not simply accept this bond without question. You will be tested. They will want to ensure you are capable of fulfilling the role of second mother, despite being human. Ask. What kind of tests? Tests of knowledge, courage, and heart. They are not designed to make you fail, but to prove your worthiness. Some humans might find them insulting or frightening. I can handle it, Hana said, hoping she sounded more confident than she felt. Good. We depart tomorrow evening. Pack only what you need. Everything else will be provided on Thraxis. The next day was a blur of activity. Hana said goodbye to Daeun, who hugged her fiercely and made her promise to send messages. She packed her few belongings, mostly clothes, and her small collection of books. Mrs. Choi seemed shocked by her decision but wished her well. Administrator Kwon, however, had one final obstacle to present. He appeared at the suite with 2 security officers and a formal-looking document. Park Hana, I am here to inform you that a coalition of member species has filed an injunction against your departure. What? Hana stared at him. On what grounds? They claim you have been coerced into this arrangement through psychic manipulation. They are demanding your return to human space for psychological evaluation. Velkara, who had been overseeing the packing, turned to face him. Her scales seemed to darken, her posture becoming more imposing. This is an outrage. My government will not tolerate this interference. With respect, Ambassador. The coalition represents 17 different species. Their concerns must be addressed through proper diplomatic channels. How long will that take? Hana asked, though she already knew the answer. Weeks, possibly months. Velkara's anger was palpable, even without the psychic bond. This is a delaying tactic. They hope that if they separate the human from my son for long enough, the bond will weaken and the issue will resolve itself. I'm only doing my job, Ambassador, Kwon said, though his antennae betrayed his discomfort. Hana looked down at Taemin, who had been watching the adults with confused eyes. Through their bond, she could feel his anxiety, his fear that something was wrong. She knelt down and pulled him close. It's okay, she whispered. We'll figure this out. But she wasn't sure she believed her own words. That night, Velkara received an emergency communication from the Thraxian High Council. Hana wasn't privy to the conversation, but she could see the ambassador's distress when it ended. The council has summoned us both to Thraxis, Velkara said. This injunction has forced their hand. They will make a ruling on whether your bond with Taemin is valid. If they rule against it. She didn't finish the sentence. When do we leave? Hana asked. In 1 hour. Before the coalition can enforce the injunction through station security. They left in the middle of the night, sneaking through service corridors that Hana knew well. A Thraxian diplomatic ship waited at a private docking port, its crew ready to depart immediately. As the ship pulled away from the celestial haven and jumped to faster-than-light travel, Hana watched the station disappear from the viewport. She was leaving behind the only life she had ever known, heading toward a world she had only read about, to face a council that would judge whether she was worthy of being part of an alien child's life. Taemin climbed into her lap, purring softly. Through their bond, she felt his trust, his certainty that everything would be all right, as long as they were together. Hana hoped he was right. The first sight of Thraxis took Hana's breath away. The planet was a mix of volcanic mountain ranges that glowed faintly with internal heat and vast forests that shimmered with bioluminescent plants. The cities, visible from orbit, were massive structures, built from what looked like crystallized lava. Beautiful and alien in equal measure. The diplomatic ship landed at the capital city's main spaceport. As they descended the ramp, Hana felt the weight of gravity slightly stronger than Earth's, and the air carried a sharp, clean scent like ozone after a thunderstorm. Waiting for them was a delegation of Thraxians, all larger than Velkara, their scales in various shades of red, purple, and deep blue. One stepped forward, his scales a striking crimson. Sister, he said, touching his forehead to Velkara's in greeting. You have brought interesting complications home with you. Brother Kiro, this is Park Hana, the human who has bonded with my son. Velkara gestured to Hana. Hana, this is my brother, Kiro. He serves on the High Council. Kiro's 4 eyes focused on Hana with an intensity that made her want to step back. But she stood her ground, meeting his gaze as steadily as she could. So small, he said. How can something so fragile protect and guide a Thraxian juvenile? I may be small, Hana said, But I care about Taemin. That should count for something. One of Kiro's eyes widened slightly. What might have been surprise. She has spirit, at least. Come. The council will convene tomorrow. Tonight, you will stay at our family compound. The compound was enormous. Built into the side of a volcanic mountain. The architecture was designed for beings much larger than Hana, with doorways 3 meters high, and furniture that dwarfed her. But there was a strange beauty to it, and the heat radiating from the volcanic rock was soothing rather than uncomfortable. Velkara showed Hana to quarters that had been hastily adapted for human needs. A smaller bed had been brought in, along with furniture closer to human scale. Rest tonight, Velkara advised. Tomorrow will be challenging, but Hana couldn't rest. She lay awake, feeling Taemin's sleeping presence through their bond. He was in the nursery wing with other Thraxian juveniles, and even though she knew he was safe, she missed his physical presence. The next morning, Kiro arrived to begin Hana's training. She had expected him to be harsh, but instead, he was thorough and patient, explaining Thraxian customs and laws in detail. Second mothers are not simply caregivers, he explained as they walked through the compound's library. They are teachers, protectors, and guides. When a juvenile reaches adolescence, they undergo what we call the severance, a psychic rite of passage. The second mother must guide them through it. What happens during the severance? Hana asked. The juveniles developing psychic abilities surge uncontrollably. They are bombarded with the thoughts and emotions of everyone around them. It is overwhelming, painful, and potentially fatal if not properly managed. The second mother uses their bond to create a stable anchor, allowing the juvenile to learn control. Hana felt her stomach drop. And if the second mother fails, the juvenile either dies or suffers permanent psychic damage. Kiro's tone was matter of fact. This is why the council must be certain you are capable. Taemin's life will depend on you in ways you cannot yet understand. Over the next 3 days, Kiro trained Hana intensively. She learned Thraxian history, their complex social hierarchies, their warrior culture, and the deep spiritual significance they placed on family bonds. She practiced meditation techniques designed to strengthen her psychic connection with Taemin. She even learned basic Thraxian language, though the clicking and melodic tones were difficult for her human vocal cords. Finally, the day of the council hearing arrived. The council chamber was a massive circular room carved from black volcanic glass. 12 Thraxians sat in raised seats around the perimeter, their scales gleaming in the light from glowing crystals embedded in the walls. At the center was an open space where Hana stood with Velkara and Taemin. The High Matriarch, an ancient Thraxian with scales that had faded to pale silver, spoke first. We are gathered to determine the validity of the bond between the human Park Hana and the juvenile Taemin, son of Velkara. This is an unprecedented situation that requires careful consideration. Another council member, his scales deep blue, spoke up. Humans are fragile, short-lived, and psychically weak. How can we trust one to fulfill the sacred role of second mother? By testing her, Kiro said, standing. I propose we conduct the traditional trials. Let the human prove her worthiness through her actions. The council murmured among themselves. Then, the High Matriarch nodded. It shall be so. Park Hana, you will undergo 3 trials. The trial of knowledge, the trial of courage, and the trial of heart. Do you accept these terms? Hana's mouth was dry, but she managed to speak clearly. The first trial began immediately. Hana was led to a smaller chamber where she faced 3 council members, including Kiro. They questioned her about Thraxian law, history, and customs for hours. The questions were complex, and sometimes seemed designed to trick her, but Hana had studied hard. When asked about the hierarchy of clan structures, she drew parallels to human family systems. When questioned about historical conflicts, she demonstrated understanding not just of facts, but of the cultural values that had driven those conflicts. Finally, Kiro raised his hand. Enough. She has passed the trial of knowledge. The second trial was different. Hana was taken to what they called the Proving Grounds, a large arena with holographic projectors. Taemin was brought in, confused and slightly frightened by the unfamiliar setting. You will face simulated dangers, the High Matriarch explained. You are not expected to fight. You are expected to remain calm and use your bond with Taemin to keep him safe. If you panic, if the bond wavers, you fail. The simulation began. Suddenly, they were surrounded by hostile terrain, jagged rocks, and pools of what looked like molten lava. Holographic predators emerged from the shadows, massive creatures with razor-sharp teeth. Taemin chirped in alarm, pressing against Hana's legs. She could feel his fear spiking through their bond. "It's not real," Hana said, forcing her voice to stay steady even as her heart pounded. "They're just holograms, Taemin. I won't let anything hurt you." She knelt down, wrapping her arms around him, and began to sing. The same Korean lullaby that had calmed him during the power outage. The song that had first strengthened their bond. Through their connection, she pushed feelings of safety and protection toward him. The predators lunged, their jaws snapping centimeters from her back, but Hana didn't flinch. She kept singing, kept holding Taemin, kept projecting calm through their bond. And then Taemin did something unexpected. His eyes began to glow, bright and fierce. His underdeveloped psychic abilities, responding to Hana's unwavering protection, lashed out at the simulated predators. The holograms flickered and distorted, then vanished entirely. The simulation ended. Hana looked up to see the council members standing, their expressions showing various degrees of shock. "Remarkable," the High Matriarch said. The juvenile defended his second mother. "The bond is stronger than we anticipated. She has passed the trial of courage." The final trial was conducted privately. Hana was led to a meditation chamber where she sat across from the High Matriarch, who was, according to Kiro, the most powerful psychic among their people. "I will enter your mind," the ancient Thraxian said. "I will see your true intentions, your deepest fears, your genuine feelings about the bond with Taemin. You cannot hide anything from me. Do you consent?" Hana was terrified, but she nodded. "I consent." The High Matriarch's eyes began to glow, and Hana felt a presence in her mind unlike anything she had experienced before. It was vast and ancient, sifting through her memories like pages in a book. She saw through the Matriarch's perspective as her own life played out. Her childhood on Earth, happy but marked by her father's death. Her mother's illness, and the crushing debt that followed. Her decision to leave Earth and work on the orbital station, sending every credit home. The loneliness, the exhaustion, the feeling of being trapped in a life that wasn't really hers. Then Taemin. The first moment she had seen him, her fear mixed with unexpected tenderness. The gradual growth of affection as she cared for him. The joy she felt when he purred in her lap. When he learned something new. When he looked at her with absolute trust. The matriarch saw something else too. Hana's fear that she wasn't good enough. That she would fail Taemin. That loving him was somehow selfish when she should be focused on her family's needs. And then the matriarch saw the truth. Hana had been afraid to acknowledge even to herself. She loved Taemin. Completely, unconditionally. The way a mother loves her child. Not because of obligation or duty, but because somewhere in the past few weeks, this small alien creature had become one of the most important beings in her life. The presence withdrew from Hana's mind, leaving her gasping and trembling. The High Matriarch was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "I have seen second mothers who bonded out of duty, out of honor, out of political advantage. But I have never seen one whose love was so pure and selfless. You fear you are not enough, young human. But it is precisely that fear, that desire to be better for his sake, that makes you worthy." Tears streamed down Hana's face. "Does that mean You have passed all 3 trials. The High Matriarch stood, towering over Hana. The Council will formally recognize your bond with Taemin. You are, in every legal and spiritual sense, his second mother. They returned to the council chamber, where Velkara and Taemin waited. When the High Matriarch announced the decision, Taemin bounded over to Hana, chirping happily. Through their bond, she felt his joy, his relief, his love. She held him close, finally allowing herself to believe that this was real, that she had a right to this bond, this love. But as the council began to disperse, the High Matriarch approached her with a warning. Your trials are not over, Park Hana. The true test will come when Taemin reaches adolescence and faces the severance. I hope, for both your sakes, that your bond proves strong enough. That night, Hana couldn't sleep again. But this time, it was different. Taemin was curled up beside her, and through their bond, she could feel his peaceful dreams. She had passed the council's tests, but the matriarch's warning echoed in her mind. The severance was still years away, but when it came, Taemin's life would depend on her ability to guide him through it. Hana stroked his scales gently, watching his eyes flicker in sleep. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. She had promised to protect him, to be his second mother in every way that mattered, and Park Hana always kept her promises. Hana woke to Taemin's distressed chirping. It was the middle of the night, and through their bond, she felt waves of discomfort rolling off him. She sat up immediately, reaching for him in the darkness. What's wrong, little one? She asked, running her hands over his scales to check for injuries. Taemin pressed against her, his body radiating heat, too much heat. His scales, normally cool to the touch, felt like they were burning. Hana's heart lurched. She activated the room's communication system. Velkara, something's wrong with Taemin. The ambassador arrived within minutes, Kiro close behind. One look at Taemin, and Velkara's expression shifted to alarm. Call the physicians. Now, she commanded Kiro. The next hours were a blur. Thraxian physicians examined Taemin, their instruments scanning his small body while he whimpered in Hana's arms. She refused to let him go, sensing through their bond that her presence was the only thing keeping him from complete panic. Finally, the head physician, an elderly Thraxian named Mora, turned to them with a grave expression. The juvenile is experiencing early onset of the severance. That's impossible, Velkara said. He's only 6 months old. The severance doesn't occur until at least 3 years. Normally, yes. But the stress of the recent events, the trials, the intensity of his bond with the human, it has triggered the process prematurely. Mora's 4 eyes focused on Hana. His psychic abilities are developing faster than his body can handle. The fever is a symptom of his mind trying to cope with the influx of sensory information. What can we do? Hana asked, hearing the desperation in her own voice. Only what was always meant to happen during the severance. You must guide him through it psychically. Use your bond to create a stable anchor for his consciousness. Mora placed a clawed hand on Hana's shoulder. But I must warn you. The process is dangerous. You will be connecting your mind fully to his during a time of extreme psychic instability. If you cannot maintain control, you could both suffer permanent damage. And if I don't try? Mora's silence was answer enough. Tell me what to do, Hana said. They prepared a special chamber deep within the compound, a meditation room designed to block outside psychic interference. Taemin's condition had deteriorated rapidly. He was barely conscious now, his eyes glowing and flickering erratically, his small body convulsing with fever. Hana sat cross-legged on the floor with Taemin cradled in her lap. Kiro stood nearby, ready to intervene if something went catastrophically wrong. Velkara watched from the doorway, her distress palpable even without psychic abilities. Clear your mind, Kiro instructed. Focus only on your bond with Taemin. Let everything else fade away. Hana closed her eyes and reached out through their connection. Immediately, she was overwhelmed. Taemin's consciousness was a storm of sensations, emotions, and half-formed thoughts crashing together in chaos. She felt his pain, his fear, his confusion, as his developing psychic abilities broadcast everything he was experiencing without filter or control. It was too much. Hana felt herself being pulled into the maelstrom, her own thoughts beginning to fragment under the assault. No, she couldn't fail him. Not now. Hana thought of the first time Taemin had nuzzled against her leg, the way he purred when she read to him, the absolute trust in his eyes when he looked at her. She gathered those memories like a shield and pushed deeper into his consciousness. She found herself in a mental landscape that was pure chaos. It looked like a nightmare version of the compound. Walls shifting and melting, corridors leading nowhere. Everything bathed in sickly light. And at the center of it all, she could sense Taemin's core self, small and terrified and lost. Hana walked through the nightmare landscape, using her memories as a guide. Every step was difficult, reality itself seeming to reject her presence. But she kept moving, kept pushing forward. "Taemin," she called out, not with her voice but with her mind. "I'm here. Follow my voice." The landscape shifted violently in response. Walls crumbling, floors opening into bottomless chasms. Hana felt phantom pain, as her mind interpreted the psychic damage as physical injury. But she kept going. She found him in what appeared to be the nursery of Velkara's suite back on the station. Except everything was wrong. The colors were too bright, the sounds too loud, and shadows moved with malevolent intent. Taemin huddled in a corner, his mental projection showing him even smaller and more vulnerable than his physical body. He was surrounded by swirling images and emotions. Fragments of thoughts from everyone he had ever been near, all bombarding him at once. "Taemin," Hana said gently, kneeling down beside him. "It's okay. I've got you." His mental voice was weak and confused. "I know, little one. But you're not alone. You'll never be alone." Hana reached out and pulled him close. And in this mental space, her arms felt solid and real. "Feel our bond. Focus on just that, just me and you." She began to sing, the same lullaby that had become their special connection. In the physical world, her lips moved soundlessly. But here, in this shared mindscape, the melody was clear and pure. As she sang, something remarkable happened. The chaos began to organize itself. The swirling thoughts and emotions started to separate into distinct streams. No longer an overwhelming flood, but individual channels that Taemin could potentially learn to manage. "That's it," Hana encouraged. "You're doing so well. Just focus on my voice. Let everything else fade into the background." But then the nightmare landscape threw a new horror at them. Hana's worst fears manifested around them. Visions of Taemin dying, of her failure, of the bond shattering and leaving them both broken. The mental projections were so vivid, so convincing, that for a moment Hana believed they were real. She felt herself starting to panic, her control slipping. And then she felt something unexpected. Taemin, even in his weakened state, was trying to protect her. His psychic abilities, still wild and untrained, lashed out at the nightmare visions, trying to drive them away. "No, Taemin, don't," Hana said. "You'll hurt yourself." "You protected me," his mental voice said, stronger now. "In the trial. When the monsters came. Now I protect you." In that moment, Hana understood something fundamental about their bond. It wasn't one-sided. She wasn't just his protector, his anchor, his mother figure. He was all those things to her too. They protected each other, strengthened each other, completed each other. "Together then," Hana said, standing and taking his hand. "We face this together." They stood side by side, and Hana continued to sing, while Taemin, guided by the melody and their bond, began to exert control over his chaotic abilities. The nightmare landscape didn't disappear, but it stabilized. The overwhelming flood of psychic input became manageable streams of information. Slowly, carefully, Hana guided Taemin through the process of building mental barriers, ways to filter and control the constant psychic information. It was exhausting work, and time had no meaning in this space. They could have been there for minutes or hours or days. But finally, the storm began to calm. Taemin's consciousness, once fragmented and scattered, began to coalesce into something coherent and stable. Hana felt herself being pulled back to her physical body. She opened her eyes to find herself still sitting on the floor of the meditation chamber, Taemin in her lap. But something was different. Taemin's eyes were open, clear and focused. His fever had broken, his scales cool to the touch, and through their bond, she felt him more clearly than ever before. Not just emotions now, but actual thoughts, simple and direct. Mother Hana, his mental voice said, using the Thraxian term for second mother for the first time. Thank you. Hana started crying, overwhelmed with relief and joy and exhaustion. You did it, little one. You're okay. Kiro stepped forward, his expression showing something that might have been awe. The severance is complete. I've never seen a juvenile survive one triggered so early, let alone emerge from it so stable. Mora entered the chamber, scanning Taemin with her instruments. Remarkable. His psychic abilities have not only stabilized, but are developing in unique ways. The bond with the human has created neural pathways we've never observed before. Over the next few days, as Taemin recovered, the full extent of the changes became clear. The bond between him and Hana had evolved beyond anything seen in traditional second-mother relationships. They could communicate in complex thoughts now, not just emotions. Hana found she could sense things through Taemin's enhanced perception, and he drew on her emotional stability to keep his abilities controlled. The High Council convened again, this time to observe Taemin and Hana. The High Matriarch watched them interact for a long time before speaking. You have created something new, she said. A bridge between species. A bond that transcends the limitations of both human and Thraxian biology. This will have implications we cannot yet foresee. Is that a bad thing? Hana asked nervously. The ancient Thraxian's expression softened, a complex shift of scales and features that somehow conveyed warmth. No, young one. I believe it is hope. Hope that our species can grow beyond what we have always been. 6 months passed. Hana had settled into life on Thraxis, learning and growing alongside Taemin. She worked with Velkara as an unofficial ambassador for human-Thraxian relations, helping to foster understanding between their peoples. Taemin thrived, growing larger and stronger, his psychic abilities developing under Hana's guidance. He was becoming something unique in Thraxian society. A juvenile who could bridge the warrior culture of his people with the compassion and empathy he had learned from his human second mother. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the volcanic landscape, Hana received a message from Earth. It was from her mother, whose health had improved dramatically thanks to Thraxian medical assistance. Her brother had graduated top of his class and was considering a career in interspecies diplomacy. Inspired by his sister's journey, "We're so proud of you," her mother said in the video message. "You found where you belong." Hana sat in the bioluminescent garden of the family compound, watching Taemin play with other juveniles. He was teaching them a game she had shown him. An Earth game, adapted for Thraxian physiology. He noticed her watching and trotted over. Much larger now than he had been 6 months ago, but still, her little one, in the ways that mattered. Sad? He asked through their bond. No, Hana said, scratching behind his head ridge. Just thinking about how strange life is. 6 months ago, I was just a maid, trying to pay off debt. Now I'm here, with you, doing things I never imagined possible. Regret? Taemin asked. Hana pulled him close. This alien child, who had become her family in every way that mattered. Not for a single moment. You chose me, remember? Best decision anyone ever made. Taemin purred, the deep thrumming sound that always made Hana feel at peace. I choose you again. Every day. As they sat together watching the moon's rise, Hannah thought about the path that had led her here. She had left behind everything familiar, faced impossible trials, nearly lost herself in a psychic storm, all for the love of a creature that most of the galaxy feared. And she would do it all again in a heartbeat. Because sometimes, family isn't about biology, or species, or following the expected path. Sometimes, family is found in the most unexpected places, with the most unexpected beings. Sometimes family is a choice you make, again and again, to stand beside someone and face whatever comes together. Velkara joined them in the garden, sitting down in a way that was becoming comfortable and familiar. Taemin, your tutors are asking about your progress with psychic defensive techniques. I show them tomorrow, Taemin said confidently. Mother Hana helped me practice. Velkara looked at Hana, and there was something in her expression that Hana had learned to recognize as gratitude. Thank you for everything you've given him, for everything you've taught him. He's taught me just as much, Hana said honestly. Maybe more. As the three of them sat together in the alien garden under alien stars, Hana realized something profound. She had spent years living for other people's expectations, other people's needs. But now, finally, she was living for herself. For the family she had chosen, and that had chosen her back. For the bond that had transformed them both. She was exactly where she was supposed to be. Home.